So you think it's no big deal if by chance there's someone anywhere within your town, who's got a disability where they function like 2-year-olds all the time. You just simply think that's no big deal. Well, there's something I need you to keep in mind. That just not only does it look bad, it also feels bad. Think about how, people like that don't meet the requirements for either having roommates or living on their own. It doesn't make sense, because just think about what it would be like to have a roommate like that. There's lots of people who have, and it does not look good. They could never be trusted with expensive equipment in the room. They could never be within the range of an adult family home master's ability to manage them. They could never be able to get what beneficial at all. The 2-year-old maturity just doesn't mean anything. It's useless. It's no good. See, they could never really be of any help, don't you see? You wouldn't be able to get what you want at all. And a lot of places lose money to that, don't you see? And there's a lot of poverty in the world, and it just looks terrible. And of course, it's getting into bigotry now too, because we don't have a way to be able to handle it anymore. And all these black and white stripes show that everybody's in shame over it, and it just doesn't look right anymore. If you can kind of think about how the way these energy comparisons work when it comes to mind energy, just think about what we have that might be of any truth. It's too much work to try to get someone who functions like a 2-year-old to play out a situation. They ruin everything. If you can see the red part of the area, that means the energy's all used up. If you can see that more gets used up trying to have to tolerate someone who functions like a 2-year-old than someone who doesn't, don't you see? Just think about it. You try to get them to play out things, but they just talk about their own feelings. You try to ask them something, but they're just in their own world, and they just keep answering like they're stubborn. You just keep getting repeats of things, and that looks bad. Even if you try to tell them they can't touch things, they just don't listen. They don't care. They take things. They don't care if what happens to anyone. There's just no way. They don't realize that to get kindness from others, you gotta give it to others. When it comes to problems this bad, it sounds almost like we just don't care. Just think about it. A lot of roommates end up getting all the bad credit over someone that are not being able to handle people like that, and that's mean, because then they have to pay for someone who just doesn't care at all. It just hurts. It's just awful. Think about what it would take. You do something and they just talk about their own feelings. They just keep repeating it. You even try to tell them no to what they think they should have that's not healthy, but they act ignorant. They get stubborn. And then eventually it boils up to a point where the one who functions well just ends up wanting to break things near him. And that just kind of gets pretty scary, because then the one who functions right loses their privilege to go where they are permanently, and that looks bad. Maybe you should think about how many restraining order records we have in our court system related to this. Nobody realizes it, and I think it's all the fault of somebody who just doesn't care to realize that 2-year-old functioning of any adult it looks bad. It's horrible. It's a sick illusion. You could even tell him to stop pouting over a loss, but it just doesn't do any good. You just keep hearing it, and then you're out of choice. Some people have even actually had to yell and cuss at him to make him knock it off. Some have even had to throw him out of the room because they're just more trouble than it's worth. It just doesn't look right. I don't think our innocent people should have to pay for someone who just doesn't care to make the repairs, that's kind of the way it looks even here, too. I think it's just plain awful when you see to it that someone doesn't realize what's wrong. When it comes to some people with disability, they often get stuck on the same songs, and that's just not good. And it repeats so many times, and spoils everybody's learning ability. A lot of people just don't seem to think it's serious, but it is. Look at that. How in the whole wide world are we going to be able to get anything to work right in this world with people who function like 2-year-olds? It just doesn't look good. A lot of times when a person of disability just becomes unhandleable by a caretaker, they just get away with things. They blow it for everyone. The repetitiveness. Why a lot of people are attempting to leave somebody everybody out of things as these kind of disabilities is because, they just can't give in, what they're trying to work. And therefore, it's just not possible to make these things. You should realize that tolerance and being able to learn music in relation to this situation doesn't exist. The two things just don't mix. There's no way. There's no way they'll ever work together. Even if we used all the patience and tolerance in the whole wide world, it wouldn't do any good. And I think it's just plain awful. People may think we have to include them in those things, but it's not right. People may think we have to have them in the household, but that's bad. It costs too much money to have to put up with that. If you don't think it's a big deal, maybe you should realize just what's happened to our country. A lot of environmental conservation bad. I mean, just think about all the things they scribble on and throw out and destroy. And they don't care about anybody else's feelings. They just rip off expenses. And I think it's kind of unfair that someone has to stay at home all the time, keeping their stuff protected, missing work and activities over having to put up with a roommate like that. That's just terrible. Having to put up with someone like that consistently. It just ruins it for everyone to have to deal with the way things are. I mean, I think it's only fair we do something to show a little conservation with things. I mean, trying to say that they have to be included just makes it just terrible. Nothing on God's whole green earth is going to make us mathematicians take them for roommates. In fact, I think by law, they're going to have to get their brains replaced with artificial ones that function better. And no family gets to say they're too poor to do so. That's just not right. See, if we do the right thing and take the brain out of someone who functions like a 2-year-old and put a new one in that's artificial and working better, just think about what we could have then. We'd be able to meet the requirements for either having roommates or living on your own. You could be trusted with expensive equipment in the room. You could be within an adult family home master's ability to manage. You could be able to get what you ask for. We wouldn't have to worry about bankruptcy. Because as you can see, this picture right here, this photograph shows a place that's very poor. You might not have thought of it, but at least 90% of this is actually caused by leaving a person of low functioning, like a 2-year-old, the way they are and never thinking about it, and making someone who has high functioning look guilty over it. I mean, that's mean. That's never nice. It's cruel. So here's what the deal's gonna be. That picture you just saw of poverty and such, just keep in mind, if you say you're too poor to try and fix your child's disability situation, to go pay the extra expense to get the brain surgery, you're going to be held responsible for whatever happens to the world at all. Which means if there's a report of poverty in the world, we're going to blame it on you if you say that you're too poor to have your child's ability fixed. If it's all sickened like that, we'll just simply have your name down in the names of every family who says they're too poor, and it's going to say just that about every one of them. There's just no way we can stand any more of it, and I think it's only fair that the ones who no one has to put up with people who function bad. As a matter of fact, don't even try to go complaining to anyone about them not getting any friends to play with, because they can't have friends to play with. They're no good. They'll just ruin everything. They'll ruin it for that person's reputation if they do that. And a matter of fact, if that's the way you're going to be, we'll just simply say he doesn't get friends until he goes and have his brain replaced with an artificial one that functions better, and that's that. That's just the way it's going to be. Disability may be fine in some places, but not when it gets someone who functions like a 2-year-old, and that's that.